The snow hit the pavement in ghost-like silence as Connor Hayes stood frozen outside the abandoned storefront. His $1,000 shoes sank slightly into a puddle of gray slush, untouched by the world he usually ruled. Two little girls, filthy, shivering, stared up at him through tangled blonde hair. One of them whispered, her breath fogging in the air, "Mommy said, the man in the fancy coat would find us." Connor's heart twisted. He didn't know why. Not yet. But the girl's face, so hauntingly familiar, was about to unravel everything he believed about his perfect, powerful life. The boardroom was a battlefield of brushed steel and polished egos, where billion-dollar mergers lived or died in the gleam of a click. Connor Hayes stood at the head of the table, voice steady, slides crisp, but inside, he was unraveling. Just 24 hours earlier, he had found himself kneeling on a frozen sidewalk beside two trembling children who looked like they'd been torn out of a world he never had to see, until they shattered his own. "Mr. Hayes, shall we proceed with the vote?" one of the directors asked, jarring him from the memory. He blinked, nodded mechanically, but the image of those girls wouldn't leave his mind. Emma and Lily. They had given him fake names, or maybe borrowed ones. He hadn't pressed. Their little hands had felt like paper in his palms. Their eyes? He still couldn't explain it. They had looked at him not like a stranger, but as if they already knew him. As if some unspoken truth had already been whispered between them. The merger passed unanimously. Applause followed. Connor smiled, shook hands, performed. But the applause sounded like rainfall inside his skull, faint, meaningless, hollow. When he returned to his office, Sarah, his longtime assistant, was waiting with a file. "Child Services called back," she said gently. "No record of those girls. No missing persons matching their description either. It's like they don't exist." Connor sat down hard. "And the mother? Name might be Melissa Reynolds, but we can't confirm. The address she gave, abandoned. No ID, no school records, no public benefits tied to them. It's like they're shadows." He opened the folder and saw the blurry photo Sarah had managed to grab from the street surveillance. The girls, curled together beneath the blinking neon sign of a closed pharmacy, hugging teddy bears too worn to still be called toys. The city had moved around them like they were ghosts. But not to him. That night, Connor walked the same street again. The air bit colder this time. He passed the storefront where he'd met them, hoping, stupidly, that they'd still be there. They weren't. Instead, a man in a threadbare coat stood there, warming his hands over a trash fire. "Looking for someone?" the man rasped. Connor hesitated. "Two girls. 5, maybe 6. Blonde. Pink coats. They were here yesterday." The man eyed him warily, then nodded. "I seen 'em. Cute ones. Real quiet. Lady with M, not right in the head. Where'd they go?" He shrugged. "Same as most. Down the back alley, into the old Guardian building. Squatter's nest. Bad place for kids." Connor's jaw tightened. "Thank you." He pulled a bill from his wallet and pressed it into the man's hand. By the time he reached the Guardian building, the moon had begun to rise, casting fractured shadows through the broken windows. He stepped over shards of glass and the remnants of someone's life in pieces, empty bottles, crumpled coats, forgotten shoes. Voices echoed faintly upstairs. He moved slowly, heart thudding like it was echoing off every wall. A door creaked open. And there they were. Emma was huddled beside Lily on a stained mattress, arms wrapped around her sister. The woman, Melissa, maybe, sat slumped against the wall, muttering to herself. Her eyes shot open when she saw him. "You. What the hell are you doing here? I just want to make sure they're safe." "They're fine." She tried to stand, swayed. "They don't need saving. I'm not here to take them. I just..." I saw them. I can't forget them. Emma looked up, her voice a whisper. Did you bring the teddy bear? Connor blinked. What? The one Lily dropped. He pulled it from his coat. I picked it up. Lily gasped and scrambled toward him. That's mine. The mother moved suddenly, yanked the girl back. Don't touch him. Rich boy thinks he can just buy his way into everything. I'm not here to buy anything, Connor said, calm but firm. I'm here because I saw something I can't ignore. They need help. You need help. Melissa's eyes burned. Help? From your kind? You wouldn't last a day down here. I'm not claiming I would. He reached into his coat again. This time, not for money, but for a worn photograph. It wasn't of the girls. It was of him. Or at least, someone who looked almost exactly like him, only it wasn't him. It was a childhood photo he'd found in his late mother's belongings. A twin, perhaps. A twin he never knew he had. He handed it toward Melissa. Do you know this boy? She stared. Her pupils shrank. Her hands began to tremble. What is this? She hissed. His name was Thomas. I think, he might have been my brother. The silence that followed was a cliff's edge. And from it came a single, shaking whisper. He was my husband. The room spun. Connor looked at the twins again. His heart cracked open. Then they're not strangers at all, he murmured. They're family. And the world, once cold and precise, began to splinter. 16 hours earlier, Connor Hayes had no idea his life was about to split into a before and an after. He had left the office late that evening, exhausted and restless. Snow drifted in lazy spirals outside his penthouse windows, untouched by footsteps. Everything in his world was curated, his wine collection, his morning playlists, even his charitable donations, which were automated and emotionless. He had it all. And somehow, he had nothing. He told Sarah he needed a walk. Not a driver. Not an assistant trailing him with an umbrella. Just, a walk. Alone. The streets below were chaotic in their own rhythm. Sirens sang from far away. A saxophone played a bluesy lullaby on the corner of 5th and Grand. Holiday lights blinked half-heartedly from storefronts that had seen better days. Connor kept walking, the cold sinking deeper than his coat could shield. And then he saw them. Tucked into the corner of a recessed doorway, two children curled together in silence, arms wrapped around each other. Their faces were thin, but beautiful in a haunting way, like porcelain dolls someone had forgotten to bring inside. Their matching blonde hair caught the flicker of a faulty neon sign, and their pink coats had been pink once, long ago. He slowed. Stared. He couldn't look away. The smaller one looked up first. Her eyes were impossibly blue, and full of something he didn't recognize in children anymore, quiet courage. She didn't beg. Didn't smile. Just watched him like she was waiting. Then the other one stirred. Sir, she whispered. He crouched. Are you okay? They nodded, too rehearsed. Where's your mother? She said, she'll come back. When? Yesterday. Connor swallowed hard. The younger one tugged at his coat sleeve. You look like someone. Who? I don't know, she said honestly. But you feel like someone. And that stayed with him like a shard in the chest. He called Sarah from the sidewalk. Asked her to look up shelters. Missing persons. Anything. Then he handed the girls a warm bag of food he'd just bought for himself and walked away like a man waking up in someone else's dream. But he didn't sleep that night. At 2:17 a.m., Connor pulled out a locked box from the back of his mother's closet. It still smelled faintly of lavender and paper and old tears. Inside, a photo he had seen maybe once before, two baby boys in a hospital crib, identical down to the swirl in their hair. One of them was him. The other, vanished from the family narrative, like a dream too painful to keep. His mother had mentioned it once, during a late-night glass of wine. "I used to feel a second heartbeat," she whispered. "Then they told me it was just an echo." Connor had believed her, but only halfway. Now, holding the photo up to the light, he wondered. Could that echo have become a man? A father? A father to them? He picked up his phone. Searched birth records. Nothing came up under his name with a twin. No death certificate. No hospital mention of twins. Only him. And yet, every instinct screamed otherwise. He stared at the photo. Then at the girls in the image from Sarah's street cam. The resemblance. The eyes. The angles of their faces. If it were just one child, maybe coincidence. But two. Twin girls, just like the photo. Just like the feeling he couldn't explain. He rubbed his temples. Something wasn't right. And whatever had been buried for 32 years was clawing its way back to the surface. By morning, he was at the hospital where he'd been born, Hayes Memorial. His family's name was etched in glass above the east wing. Money had scrubbed away most records. But one elderly receptionist had been there long enough to remember things others forgot. "Do you recall Catherine Hayes's delivery?" he asked her gently. She hesitated. "I do." "Was there ever talk of twins?" Her eyes sharpened. "What are you really asking?" He handed her the photo. She took one look. Went pale. "You should speak to Dr. Whitman." "Who's that?" "Head of obstetrics at the time. He's retired. Volunteers Tuesdays and Thursdays." Today was Thursday. Connor left the hospital with a name, a direction, and a pressure in his chest he couldn't define. He'd never believed in fate. Not truly. But something was aligning, threads pulling together from a fabric that had been torn before he ever learned to speak. He called Dr. Whitman. Got his address. And drove into the snowy quiet with a question burning like fire. What happened to my brother? And why did no one ever tell me he existed? Dr. Whitman lived in a modest brick townhouse on a quiet side street, the kind of place where trees bowed with age and silence hung like folded quilts over the snow. Connor stood at the door, heart thudding, fingers curled tight around the old photograph of the two infant boys. When the door finally opened, the man who emerged was thinner than memory suggested, with a cane in one hand and resignation in his eyes, like someone who had waited decades for a knock that finally came. "You're Catherine's boy," Dr. Whitman said before Connor could speak. "I am," Connor replied. "And I think I had a brother." Dr. Whitman didn't invite him in, he stepped aside, wordlessly, and led him into a study that smelled of paper and dust and long unspoken truths. "You were born during a winter storm," the doctor began as he settled into a creaking chair. "We delivered twins that night. But the next morning, only one birth certificate was ever filed." Connor stiffened. "Why?" "Because your father made it so." Connor's hands clenched. "My mother, did she know?" "She suspected," Whitman admitted. But by the time she woke from surgery, the second infant had already been transferred. No trace. No record. Just, gone. Transferred to where? The doctor's eyes darkened. "That, I was never told." I voiced concerns, quietly. Next week, I was offered a sabbatical. I took the hint. Connor rose, pacing. So he erased his own son. Not erased. Hidden, Whitman said quietly. Your father believed two heirs would be dangerous. Twins were a liability in his mind, a threat to control. One child he could shape. Two, might rebel. Connor stared at the photo. What was his name? We never had time to name him. But your mother whispered something as she went under. Thomas, I think. Thomas. The name hit like a punch. He felt breathless. Connor pulled out his phone and searched local birth records again, this time under Thomas, narrowed by the same birth date. One result. Thomas Reynolds. Adopted. No biological parents listed. A small note at the bottom. Deceased. 3 years ago. Survived by wife Melissa Reynolds and twin daughters. Connor's hands shook. He's dead. Dr. Whitman closed his eyes. I'm sorry. Connor couldn't speak. All those years. A twin he never knew. A life cut off before they ever had the chance to collide. And now, twin girls. Living shadows of the brother he never held. Outside, the snow began to fall again, fat, silent flakes that softened the edges of the world. He drove in silence to the address tied to Melissa Reynolds. A derelict building on the edge of the city, the kind that leaned inward like it was tired of standing. He entered cautiously. Flickering light. Stale air. A cough echoing somewhere deep. Then, a voice. Please don't take them. He turned a corner to find a woman sitting cross-legged on a tattered mattress, arms wrapped around two small figures who turned, wide-eyed. The girls. Lily and Emma. Melissa rose, unsteady, defensive. They're mine. I'm not here to take them, Connor said softly. I think I'm their uncle. She froze. I'm Thomas's brother. Her face changed. Tears brimmed without falling. He never knew. I didn't either, Connor whispered. Until yesterday. Lily stepped forward. You're the man with the same eyes. Emma followed. Mommy said Daddy had a brother once. But he was a ghost. Melissa covered her face with her hands, sobbing silently. Connor knelt beside them. He wasn't a ghost. He was stolen from me before we even had a chance. From the corner of the room, a sound, footsteps. A woman emerged. Sharp suit. Cold eyes. Vanessa Clark. His father's legal advisor. Well, she said coolly. This just became complicated. Connor stood. What are you doing here? Your father sent me. We've been keeping tabs. You weren't supposed to find them. You've known. Connor's voice cracked. You've known this entire time. Vanessa's lips curled. We all have our loyalties. Melissa reached for her daughters protectively. Don't let her take them. Connor stepped between them. You're not taking anyone. Vanessa's smile faltered. Be careful, Mr. Hayes. You're playing with a legacy you barely understand. He didn't flinch. This isn't about legacy. It's about blood. And truth. She turned sharply, disappearing into the shadows, her voice echoing behind her like a threat, then prepared to lose everything. Connor exhaled slowly, his arms tightening around the girls. Behind him, Melissa whispered, she said they'd be safer forgotten. But I couldn't do it. Connor looked down at the twins, his nieces. Thomas's legacy. His redemption. We're not forgetting anything, he said. We're going to remember everything. And the storm outside began to break, just enough for the city to start breathing again. Connor stood in the freezing silence of the street, the city's sirens distant, muffled by snow. Inside the broken building, the warmth of Lily and Emma's little arms still clung to his coat. Melissa was asleep upstairs now, exhausted, her body finally resting after years of chaos. And the girls? Curled up on Connor's penthouse sofa, fed, clean, and calm, for the first time in a long time. He looked out at the skyline, but this time it didn't feel like a monument to power. It felt like something that could crumble. And maybe, that was okay. The next morning, Veronica Blackwood appeared at his door. Her silver hair was tied back tightly, and in her hands, She carried a weathered envelope, his mother's handwriting unmistakable. "She made me promise," the nurse said. "If ever you found Thomas's children, I was to give this to you." Connor's fingers trembled as he opened it. Inside was a folded note. "If you're reading this, it means you found your way to your brother's heart. Don't let them grow up apart like you and he did. Forgive what you must. And love what you have. Always. Mom." His breath hitched. Veronica placed a hand on his arm. She never stopped hoping. By midday, Diana had filed the necessary emergency guardianship paperwork. The courts moved fast when you had the right evidence, and the right truth. The DNA tests. The hospital tags. The testimony from Whitman. Even Melissa, now fully cooperative and willing to seek help, had signed temporary custody to Connor. But none of it mattered as much as what happened that evening. The girls were drawing at the coffee table. Lily was coloring a son. Emma, always more quiet, was drawing two boys, both with sad eyes and matching birthmarks. Connor sat down beside them, quiet. Emma held up the drawing. "Uncle Connor, is this what you and Daddy looked like?" His throat tightened. "Yeah," he whispered. "I think it's exactly what we looked like." Lily climbed into his lap. "Will we live here now?" "If that's what you want," he said. "We want pancakes," she replied seriously. "Like Daddy made." Connor laughed, truly laughed, for the first time in weeks. "Deal." Later that week, as the snow melted and sun streaked across the penthouse windows, Connor stood in front of the board at Hayes Investments. His father's chair was empty now. Vacant. Cold. "I won't pretend the last few weeks haven't changed everything," he began. "But maybe they've changed us for the better." He glanced out the glass walls of the conference room, where Lily and Emma were sitting cross-legged on the carpet, watching cartoons with their teddy bears in hand. They looked like they belonged there. Because they did. "I'm not building legacy anymore," he said quietly. "I'm rebuilding something that should have never been broken." That afternoon, his father sent a message from the rehab center, no threats, no manipulation. Just a line of text. "Tell them I'm sorry." Connor didn't respond. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Instead, he returned home, where two little girls had made a fort out of designer pillows, where their laughter bounced off high ceilings that once echoed with nothing but silence. As the day faded, Lily tugged at his sleeve. "Uncle Connor, will you tell us a bedtime story?" He nodded. "Okay. But it's not about princesses or dragons." "What's it about?" Emma asked. Connor lifted them both onto his lap, tucking the blanket around their tiny shoulders. He looked at them, at the way their eyes mirrored his mother's, their father's, and something new entirely. "It's about two brothers," he said softly. "Separated by time, by secrets, but who found each other again, through two brave little girls." "And did they live happily ever after?" Emma asked. Connor smiled, pressing a kiss to each forehead. "They're still learning how." The city lights shimmered beyond the window, quiet now, as if pausing to listen. And in that moment, Connor knew, the mansion of power he'd inherited meant nothing, compared to the home he'd just begun to build. Not from marble or wealth or legacy. But from truth. And love. And the pieces of a family finally made whole.